You know, I'm just gonna take a wild guess. Maybe my guess is unfounded. Maybe my guess is based on absolutely nothing. But I would like to assume that you have friends. Maybe you don't have friends. Maybe you're one of these people who has never had friends. There aren't a lot of them, but some of them exist. And if you're watching this YouTube channel, I feel like you're probably more likely to be one of them. No offense. But there's a lot of people out there who do have friends. So I'm going to take a guess and assume that you have friends. And friendships tend to have varying degrees of closeness. Like, they tend to be more or less close depending on your temperament, your relationship up to that point, and a variety of other factors. But the closer, Evangelion actually figured this out. The closer that individuals get to one another, the more likely it is that they'll end up pushing each other away or getting each other hurt because they're like hedgehogs. You know, when two hedgehogs get really close together, their prongs hit one another, and then they both get hurt because they got close together. And humans are kind of like that. Evangelion basically figured that out. And that's how humans are. And so there's a variety of ways that humans hurt one another. And there's a lot of ways that humans get hurt. But I think many of them are avoidable. And one of those particular ways where I was hurt when I would get close to my friends was due to the way that I see myself. It was due to perceptions I have about myself that others didn't have about me. And I think friends are generally, because they want to make you feel good, they're friends with you. And generally, when we're friends with someone, we want to make that person feel good. You know, friends are generally in favor of doing that. Generally, they desire doing that because they like you. And when you like somebody, you want to make them feel good, and in turn, that makes you feel good. And so it's this big, you know, it's this big pleasure puddle that you get into with each other, where you're like rolling around in each other's pleasure that you've erupted all onto one another. You're just erupting all over each other in this circle that you're in, okay? And, you know, because that's like the baseline of friendship, that's kind of where, that's kind of the situation we all want to be in, right? That, that's kind of the place that we're all driving towards, but it's also kind of where we start at. When a friend criticizes you, especially at some fundamental level, like when it comes to, you know, your sense of self or who you are, or one of these big things, really, it's actually an immensely meaningful sign of closeness and trust, because what they're doing is they're taking this pleasure puddle that is kind of the baseline state for the friendship, where they want to affirm you, you know, they want to affirm your conception of yourself because they know that that makes you feel good about yourself. That makes you feel good in general, which makes them feel good. You know, their baseline is wanting to affirm that, so it actually goes a step further when they disagree with you on something fundamental like that. They're saying, I'm gonna buck this trend in our behavior, in our human behavior. I'm gonna buck this trend just to tell you this thing I really think you should know. Just to tell you this thing that is important for you to know, that I care about you so much, that I think this is important for you to know. And it's this sign of closeness. It's not something that should be taken for granted. It's something that should be appreciated, because if they're willing to be honest with you in spite of those circumstances, I mean, what reason are they doing that other than because they care about you and they want to see you succeed? And, maybe they're wrong. You know, maybe they're open to being wrong also, but they feel like the information should get out. That in the event that they're right, you know, they'd feel worse for not telling you. And, like, even if to both of you they end up being wrong, just the observations, the outside perspective could provide some utility for you. And that this could, in turn, better your life. And so it's really important to hear that kind of stuff. It's really important to say that kind of stuff. But more than anything, it's meaningful for us to say that kind of stuff. And it shouldn't be taken for granted. And that's something that I used to do when I was like a teenager. And even, not too long ago, even like a year ago, I was doing stuff like this. I would take this constructive criticism or these alternative views on me, and I would go like, hey, fuck off. Why are you saying this kind of stuff? And I was wrong to do that. I think I should have heard those things from those people and then went, well, thank you. Thank you for telling me. I mean, thank you for having the courage to tell me. Thank you for being willing to tell me. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for being a part of my life. That's what I should have been saying. And I think we spend so much time caught up in our own minds that more often than not, we're unwilling to say these things that I think should be so obvious for us to say. Like, it shouldn't be this radical, scary thing to do to say, like, hey man, like, I appreciate your perspective and I love you. It shouldn't be this radical thing to do that. But in this society that we live in, it's treated that way. And I just think this is an awful thing. I think it's something that needs to be changed. But it's not something that can be changed overnight. And I think it starts with these little things. These little things like, if you hear that kind of criticism or that kind of alternative view that might even significantly, bump up against your own view of yourself, take that in stride. Acknowledge that you're fallible, they're fallible. It's probably not as black and white as either of you would like to think it is, but it's useful. Your opinion is useful, their opinion is useful, but it's coming from a certain place. And if they're saying that, it's probably because they care about you. And that should not be taken for granted. So tell your friends that you love them today. Appreciate your friends if they do something like that. If they're saying something that's making you want to be argumentative or, perhaps in the moment feel insulted or attacked, realize you're not being attacked. You're actually being loved. That this is a form of love. And maybe they deserve some love back if they're willing to give that to you in the first place.